So in our ARIS knowledge share sessions, today's session is about process governance and how do you manage the life cycle of content within ARIS. So as usual, I'll run this session as a slide share where I'll talk about the theory, and then we'll go into the tool and actually look at a demo and the configurations and the setup that's needed to use ARIS. I'll work with an example today, and then we can see how that works. So let me share my screen and I'll present slides to you first, and then we'll look at the actual tool. Right. So, uh, right. So just to give an introduction on process governance, what process governance is all about is managing the content lifecycle within ARIS. And I'll take an example of a release cycle management process today to show you an example workflow. I'll also talk about some setup and prerequisites that are needed to be using process governance, and then how you can monitor the life cycle of content within ARIS. However, you need to note that in order to be working with process governance as a capability within ARIS, you need to have two licenses. There's a server level license that's needed called ARIS Server Enhancement Pack Process Governance. YCS is its product code. And you need an architect enhancements pack called Process Governance YAA. So these are needed for you to be able to design and deploy processes uh, of your liking. However, at this point, I also want to mention that governance as a topic is already available out of the box in ARIS Cloud. So when you log on to ARIS Cloud and you work with the ARIS Connect, there are a number of workflows that are available out of the box that you could use for managing content within ARIS. So just to give you a quick view on it, when I log on to ARIS and go to one of these models, you have a few buttons on the top that you can see. So there are some buttons here: propose document, submit change request, inform owner of change. These are all related to governance. So they all have small workflows built in the background. So when you click on submit change request, it actually initiates a small workflow that goes on to the process owner of this diagram, who can then decide if this change request is valid and then can take action against it. So there are some mini workflows that are currently available in Connect, which you can already start using out of the box. However, if you need to deploy something that is more centric towards your requirement and is specific to your needs, then you do need to build that using the process governance engine. And for that, you do need these two licenses. So if you were to create your own process and deploy it, then you do need the governance licenses for it. So what is process governance all about? All of us have been using ARIS for managing content within ARIS. We have been using it for documenting processes, but some other advanced users also use it as an enterprise management system to manage other things like documents, standard operating procedures, and other assets within ARIS. And all of them have a life cycle of their own that you need to manage. And the target groups that we have that are related to ARIS are many. So you have people working in ARIS as a modeler. There are others who are looking at the processes as a process analyst or a business analyst. Then you have project management office who looks at processes and how they're impacted by the processes. Which projects are going to be touching which processes and changing them. You have enterprise architects who look at ARIS from the viewpoint of the assets such as applications. There is a concept of GRC where the risk and compliance managers are looking at processes from an angle of which controls are carried out in which process, where's the risk occurring. So there are a number of target groups or the audience of ARIS is quite varied, and they want to look at ARIS from different perspectives and also take part in this life cycle of content within ARIS. So they might be looking at changes taking place within ARIS. They might be looking at managing change in a structured manner. Some of them are also interested in audit trail and the history behind the change, such as people from the risk and compliance team want to look at how the change has taken place over time and need an audit trail for it. So, in order to make this transparent, we do have a workflow engine called ARIS Process Governance that lets you design and deploy the processes that you think are needed for managing the content within ARIS. When I say that, what I basically mean is that governance is an act of managing the process of process management. So you've got process management as a discipline, but to manage that process management as a discipline, you do need some sort of governance behind it. So if you look at a typical life cycle of a process, it starts with a vision or a strategy based on which you create a design. So there's a business architecture involvement here. You design a model or a set of processes which are implemented in the sense that you either implement an application system to make them live, or you train people to use these designed processes. So that's the act of implementation within your organization. And once you've implemented it, you want to ensure that they are being used as designed. So there's an act of controlling where you look at the processes and see if they're performing as per the design. And where there's a deviance and they are not as designed, and you see that there's a gap between the design and the actual performance, then you get back to the drawing board and reinitiate this change to ensure that the target operating model is met. So this act of design, implementation, controlling, and the loop back is something that you need to control. So we call it change management, and the change management needs some sort of a vehicle to be executed, and that's where we have this governance coming into picture. So the idea of governance is that there is some sort of traceability and transparency when you carry out a change. When I look at it from a BPM rules perspective, there are multiple people working in ARIS. You have the ARIS COE, who is initially responsible for building the repository. So they create the folder structures, they populate data related to applications, related to controls and rests. Organization units and stuff, and then comes along the designer who creates content within ARIS or updates content within ARIS using some of these enterprise assets. And then there's an act of approval where somebody who owns the process goes through that particular process that has been designed or changed and validates if it is relevant. And on their approval, you could have an additional scrutiny from the ARIS COE team, who can perhaps check it from a standards perspective to see if the process design meets the modeling conventions, and then they can release the process. So in this case, it is a two-step approval. You design or change the process owner approves the business logic behind it, and then the COE Center of Expertise approves the modeling standards, and then the consumer can then consume this once it is released. If we continue this pattern, the consumer, when they're consuming or looking at the processes, they have an option to submit ideas for change or optimization or requests for change, where they can submit it via some sort of a form or a workflow, which is what I had showed you earlier in this example here, where you're submitting a change request, which is a mini workflow. So you can click on this and submit change against this particular process. So you can say what the change is all about, what do you want to suggest, and then the ability to say what kind of priority does it have, high, normal, low, depending on the kind of change the user is suggesting. Along with that, they have the option to upload any documentation or supporting collateral that they wish to share with the process owner. So that's an act of submitting an ID or a change request. The change request goes off to the process owner, who can then approve or reject that change. If it is approved, then the cycle goes on again. So the process designer goes in and starts making the change, and it goes through an approval cycle. So this cycle repeats itself time and again in order to optimize our processes and ensure they are fit for purpose. Having said that, if I look at it from the tool perspective, you have the BIS process actually creates content within ARIS. So they might be creating a process diagram, but equally they might be updating a operating procedure, standard operating procedure SOP. So it could be a document as well, or it could be a library model. It could be a value-added chain diagram or an application diagram. So the idea is that the process analyst or somebody who's responsible for creating content either creates content or updates content, which needs to be reviewed by one or many people. So in this case, 2 people. And then there are people who consume it. So the modeling is done using the Connect Designer, and the publication is done using Connect Viewer. So as long as you have these licenses of modeling using Connect Designer and then viewing using Connect Viewer, then you are able to manage or use the governance process. So as I said earlier, you have some standard out-of-the-box governance processes that are available for people to consume. So there is a process for submitting ideas. There is also a Connect Mini workflow for change approval, which is a one-step approval and works on a single database. So it doesn't work on multiple databases. Instead, there's a single database. And as and when the process owner approves content, it is immediately published as a new version model. So these are standard mini workflows that are available in Connect already. But many a times they are not sufficient, and you want to have some more logic built in, where you want to include some sort of flexibility to have multiple approvals, or you want to have things like inclusion of function allocation diagrams that are assigned to tasks within a process, or you want some sort of voting for process approval. So if there are multiple people involved in approval, you want to have a voting strategy for approval. So if you want to have such flexibility and build your own process, then you do need to create your own process using the process governance option within ARIS. And in order to be able to do that, we have got the ARIS Architect Enhancement Pack process governance, which allows you to create your own process. So you can decide how the process should look like. So you create the tasks of step 1, submit the model for approval. Step 2, carry out some semantic checks automatically. Step 3, approve the model, approve the content by the process owner. So you can have multiple steps one after the other, where some of them could be automated and some of them could be human steps. And once you have decided this process of how that governance should work, you have an option to deploy it. Having said that, it's not just the design of the process that's not just sufficient. Wherever you have options of either presenting dialogues to the end user, or using web services to carry out some automated tasks, the process governance does give you that flexibility in terms of some out-of-the-box services. So at this time, let me go into the architect and show you how this is done, so that you get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So in the architect, we have something called the governance automation models database, where these governance processes are created. And this is available as a standard database shipped with the product. So you can have access to this, where you can see some standard governance use cases. It also shows you some governance examples. And this is something that you can go through to see or get some fair idea of how to work with governance processes. So if I look at, say, example and look at, say, release cycle management. So release cycle management is about initiating a change request and releasing it to production. So if I look at this process, then it does have a few steps which are defined in the value-added chain diagram. So initiate approval, prepare model. It can be either one step where it goes directly to the process owner for approval, or it could be two steps where there's a review performed by the COE, and then it goes to the process owner for approval. And in both the cases, either one step or two step, there's an option to reject the model. So you can reject it at this stage and you can reject it at this stage as well. If it is rejected, then the person who initiates it is notified. If it is approved, then it is published to the live database. If I drill down further, this, for example, review model, how is the review done? If I want to look at how the review is done, there's a process underneath, which has been designed as per the requirement. So it looks like this, where some automated work is done, where frequent reviews are carried out, which is things like semantic check, mandatory attributes have been, if they have been maintained and stuff like that. So it looks at all of those things to ensure that the checks and balances are in place. And if that passes, then the person responsible is sent this task of carrying out the review. And if you look at this task, you see that there's a human actor who does it. There's a screen that is allocated to it, which is actually presented to the user in the process board for approval. And you can design this as per your liking. For now, I can just show it to you how it looks like. So this is how it would look like. It would have some of these things filled in automatically, and the ones that are in light color, those are the ones there where the user can fill out stuff. So that's the screen design. You can design this as per your liking. There's also the content of the notification that's available, which is sent to the user for notification, which you can also maintain as per your liking. So you can maintain the subject, you can maintain the text that should be sent as a mail notification to the user who is carrying out this review step. And it goes on. And there are most of these, if you look at these symbols here, it's a little different from this one. This is a human task where this human is sent a notification and is presented this dialogue in the tool where they carry out their task. Whereas the others which are following it, update model attributes, move model to review database, these are all automated steps. You can see that there are these automated symbols here. And it is supported by these particular services. And writing attributes to multiple elements, adding objects to a database, moving objects between databases. So these are the services that are pre-built and are available here for your consumption in this area called governance resources. So in governance resources, you have multiple things. You have got dialogues where you can decide and build your own dialogues, which I just showed you. Else, you can create something from scratch. You've got these governance services, which I was talking about earlier, where you can have various governance services that are available out of the box. Things like publication, if you want to look at user management, things like creating a user, assigning privileges to a user, adding user to a user group. All of these are pre-built services which you assign against the task that is carrying it out. So when you say move model to a database, you use this service which is available of moving the content between multiple databases. So that's how you would design the process and then create an executable out of it by clicking this button. So you can decide how the governance should work, what it should be doing, and then you can generate an executable. in which case you then are able to use it as buttons here. So you would get buttons here where you can click on that and initiate the approval cycle. I will work through one process in a bit, the release cycle management process, to show you how it really works. So if I go back to my screen. So these are some of the out-of-the-box services that are available. So services related to user could be creating a user, deleting a user, making changes to a user's privileges. For documents, you've got some services like uploading a document, locking, unlocking documents, deleting documents. There are others which are related to read-write of attributes. So if you want to update attributes during a governance process, you want to delete attributes or move things around, then you have some web services for that. There are others which are available for publishing database and creating links to the model in the shown in the dialog, which I'll talk about in a bit. So these are the web services that you can use in your process design to automate a large part of your governance process. And once you have done that, you can create an executable out of it, and then users can use it. So when a user creates a model, they can then click on a button and start a governance process, which is, for example, for an approval. And then the user or the model owner can approve or reject the change that has been carried out by the modeler. And all of it is being supported by mail notifications. So whenever a change request is created, or when an action is taken against a task, as in approval or rejection, people are notified. So the relevant parties are notified. It is role based, so you have different roles like a modeler, process owner, center of expertise, and they receive their own notifications depending on the tasks that have been assigned to them. Apart from that, there's also the concept of substitution and escalation, as well as delegation. So when I'm working with ARIS, I can delegate tasks to somebody else. So if I've received a task as a center of expertise to carry out some work, and I perhaps feel that there is somebody else who is more suitable for managing that task, then I can delegate it to another party. There is also an aspect of escalation. So if, for example, there's a task that is pending with the user for a long time, then as part of a policy, you can decide what kind of escalation you want to take. So say if 75% of the time is completed, then an escalation should go to the manager of that particular user. So you can have some sort of an escalation strategy there. There's also an aspect of substitution. So if, for example, you're heading off to holidays for the next 2 weeks, you can substitute yourself with somebody else, in which case all the tasks that were allocated to you and are coming your way in the next 2 weeks will be redirected to somebody else. So you can decide who the substitute is going to be while you're away. And any new task that is being assigned to you is redirected to that person. So all of these are standard capabilities within the tool that you can use. And last but not the least, for now, once you've deployed this process and people are using it, you have the option of monitoring the governance process. So there are graphs as well as tables in which you can see the number of processes that are undergoing change. Where is the change pending? How many changes are pending with which user? What's the age of a change? If it has been pending for more than a month, you can actually filter it and see how long has the change been pending and where it is stuck. So all of those things are available as part of governance dashboard. I'll show you an example today, which is a representation of the status of the governance workflows, the processes that are undergoing change. So that's about the governance. The idea is that there is some sort of workflow that allows you to manage change in a structured manner. So you can decide what that governance process should look like and design it of your own, and use the ready-made services to manage automated activities within it. To bring this to life, I'll take an example of change management workflow today to work with it and show you how it actually works. You have seen the the workflow which I showed you here as a design, but how does it work in life is something that I'll show you with an example. So the workflow that I'm trying to show you now is related to a process. So a user can create a model or change a model and submit it for approval using this button here called Approve Content. So this is Connect Designer screen, and once you've designed your process, a BPMN model perhaps, you have an option to click on this and submit it for an approval. Uh, Once you've initiated that approval, you have an option of either a one-step approval wherein just the COE approves it, or you can have a two-step approval where the COE looks at it from a standards perspective, and then it goes off to the process owner who validates the change from a business standpoint. And on successful approvals on both accounts, it is published to the larger audience. And here we have some flexibility built in that if the requester, the initiator, is the person who actually owns the model, then it skips this second step and automatically is published. So if the requester is the owner, then this step is skipped, because it doesn't make sense if the doer and the checker are the same people, as in it doesn't add any value. So if the COE looks at the model and sees that the owner is the person who has created the approval, and they approve it, then it is automatically published. On the other hand, the COE also has an option to skip this manually by ticking a button, a checkbox, and skipping this bit if they think the change is too trivial to bother the process owner. So if the change is like a typo correction, or they've just moved object from one XY position to another XY, some cosmetic change, then, and there's no business impact as such, then they can say, okay, let me just skip this and manually trigger a publish directly without engaging the process owner in this approval process. uh, so there is some flexibility built in here as part of this workflow. You can decide if you want it to work in a different way, if you want a different behavior. You can manage that as part of your design. So when you create the underlying process in Architect, so here you can, if you want to have it differently, you can design it differently. So if it is mandatory that every time it's a two-step approval, then you can actually skip this option of going direct, and you can bring in that second step here in line so that it is in a sequence one after the other. Okay. Another thing that you wish to note here is that this particular approach works on a multiple database structure. In this case, it is actually a 3-layer database. We separate out the content design from the publication. So there's a development database where the designers and the COE have the right privilege and they create content in here. And there's a production database which is actually published out to the viewers, where you can look at the content and consume it. You have an option to comment on it if you were to comment on it, but you cannot change the content itself. So you can, as part of collaboration capability, you can comment on the things and you can chat about it, but you cannot make any change into the actual structure of the process. So the content is logged for change in this database. It is view only. And any change that needs to be done should be done in the dev database. As part of the approval process, 1 or 2-step approval, it moves to the production database. There's also an archive database, which I have not shown here, but the archive database is to manage the history in terms of audit trail. So if part of this process, if I go back, it also allows archival. What that means is that if a process needs to be decommissioned, a user can submit an archival request in which the model is taken out of the publication database and the dev database, and it is maintained in the archive with the history to say what why was it decommissioned with all the necessary audit trail. So that information is logged in the archival database. So in the future, if somebody wants to look at what all has been archived in the past, there is an audit trail, and the COE can look at that information and make it available to the auditors or the compliance guys or anybody who is asking for that information. So the archival database is also part of this structure. So it's a three-tiered structure: dev, production, and archival. The archival is not available to the general audience, nor is it available to the modelers. It is available only to the administrators who look at it from a reference point of view. Right. So as part of setup, it is a three database structure. The dev is where the modeling or the change works. Production is where the content is released for consumption, and archival is where all the change history and the logs related to them are maintained. In addition, there are two other databases. One of them I already spoke about, the governance automation models, where you actually design the workflow and deploy it. There's a governance log models database as well, where the audit is logged from a status perspective. So every time you initiate a change, it creates an item in this log models where it maintains updates the status of what's happening to that particular process instance. So is it work in progress? Is it under approval? Is it being validated by the process owner? Is it published? So that change in the status is managed here, and it is used for reporting in the dashboards, which is what I showed you here. So where it shows you all of these graphs, that information is obtained from this governance log models, where it shows the status of a particular change. In this set of five databases, the dev database is available to the modelers. The production database is available to the viewers. The rest of the databases are not available to anybody except the administrators. Right. As part of this, I said you have some flexibility to carry out some checks and balances as part of the governance workflow, which is automated in one of the steps, which I briefly spoke about earlier, called validation. So when we were looking at this thing, we said review model. The very first step it was doing is performing frequent reviews. So that's an automated step where some frequent reviews are performed. And those could be these. Check if all the databases are available. So the dev, production, and archive, it checks if all the databases are available. It ensures that the change has been carried out in the dev database. You cannot start an approval process in the production database. That is only for consumption. So it checks that the change has been carried out in the dev database and is moving upwards. Model is unlocked for change. It checks users access, whether the user is a COE user or a non-COE user, whether the user is a process owner or not a process owner. So it looks for all of that information. It does some semantic checks. You can decide what the checks it is going to perform as per your modeling conventions. It also checks if there are any ongoing change approvals already on that process. So if somebody else has already carried out a change and it is an ongoing change, then those are some things that it checks and rejects the change as well. It ensures that the person responsible is maintained. The person responsible is this person, the process owner, who validates the change from a business standpoint. So it ensures that the person responsible is maintained. You can also configure the scope of assignment. So if you are starting the governance process at a higher level, you perhaps want to include a number of sub-processes under it, or you want to include the FADs related to the tasks in that particular process. All of those are configurable, and you can decide to what level of, to what degree of assignments you want to include in this particular change request. For example, there's a project that affects a particular business area, which has 50 or 70 processes under it. Then you can start the approval cycle on the business area at the very top, say level 2, once the project is ready for go live, and include the whole scope as one change request and get it approved. So those are some things you can do as part of the flexible configuration. Some prerequisites: that person responsible is maintained, level of model is maintained. This is optional. It is needed for this scope of assignments feature. So if you want to include the number of underlying processes, then it's good to know what level of the model is, and then we can decide how many models or the layers under it are to be included in the particular change request. Also, it is a prerequisite the model is semantically correct. So it's a good idea that the modeler runs a manual semantic check and ensures that the model complies to the standards before they submit it for approval. It's a good practice to do that anyway. Right. And then, as part of reporting, as I had said earlier, there are dashboards that are available where you can look at content to see how the change is taking place. You can track the change in terms of how many models have been approved, how many have been rejected, how many are undergoing change, where are they stuck, who is the person working on, or where's the task waiting, as in who is the person who needs to perform the task. So those are things that you can see in as part of the reporting in dashboards. Right. So that was the theory behind it. And now let me work through one process to show you how it works in practice. So if I log in as a modeler, uh, let me just log in. Why is this stuck? Let's start it. Okay. So I log in as a modeler. And as part of my day-to-day activity, I go to my models and objects and I perhaps make changes to a particular model. So if I look at my repository of models, I just look at the dev database. So I have an access to this. I go to the models that need a change, say core processes and financial services, any of them. Let me just take this as an example. So if I'm working on this particular model and I make changes to it, so perhaps the requirement is that I need to add another step after this customer advised on direct credit. So I perhaps need to add another step here. So I can add some information here, or maybe delete this and add more. Where's So that's the new step that I wish to add. And perhaps I also want to rename this. So I've deleted something, I've renamed something, I've added another activity in here. And if I think that this change is fine, I can then run a semantic check. But before that, save the model. So the model is saved now. And then I can run a semantic check, say structure rules for process models. And ideally, you shouldn't get any error here. The model should be semantically correct. Yeah, system is slow today for some reason. Zero errors, one warning. The warning is about usage of this process interface that I think it's talking about how it has been used or it's not copied correctly into the next model. But I'll ignore the warning for now. Ideally, it's a good idea to correct the warning. For this demo, I'll ignore it. But I see that there's no error as such. And what I can do is also ensure that the process owner is maintained because that's the person who is going to be uh, carrying out this approval. So the model owner has to be maintained as a prerequisite. So I'll call it the owner, model owner, and save this model. So I maintained the owner. I have ensured that this is semantically correct. There are no errors. At this stage, I have an option to submit this model for an approval click by clicking this button called request approval. So when I click this request approval, it says that this model is going to be logged and it will then proceed for an approval. So it starts that and you see there's the lock that has come up here. So now that there's no valid user in the attribute model. So it's done some check and as you see it's saying it can't find the model owner. So it's done some check. I think I did maintain that, isn't it? Model owner. Okay. No, it is correct. I think my system is a bit slow, so it has not saved that model when I started that approval cycle. So I maintained the model owner now and it has been saved. Okay. So now what it says is that I have two options. One is either to publish the model or delete the model. Delete is archival. So if you want to delete something or decommission a particular process, you click on this. But in my case, I want to publish it. So I'll let it remain the first one. At this stage, I perhaps want to show you another feature here as well. So before I do that, let me show you what happens if I maintain the model owner as myself, as in the person who is carrying out this change. So what I'm trying to show you is this step here, that the requester is the owner, in which case it actually skips this step. So what happens if the requester is the owner? So if I change this owner to modeler, that's how I've logged in. And then I start an approval process. See, now I get another drop down here, authorization to publish. What it is saying is that as owner of this process, I confirm it can be published without additional approval. So this is something that you're giving in return, that I am the owner and I am authorizing skipping of this step here. So then I don't, because I'm the doer as well as the checker, I am approving it upfront, saying that, okay, I can skip this step and only one level of approval is sufficient. So that's what is the meaning of this, in which case this is also recorded that this was something that the modeler had said beforehand, and changes made as requested. So in this case, it is going to be just one step approval where the COE approves it. But then for the demo, I think it is sufficient. Just to show you the capability, you can have n number of approvals, doesn't matter. But to show you capability, let's stick with this one level of approval. So I send it off. So it says the request has been sent successfully. At this stage, ideally you would get a mail with whatever the subject you had maintained here. So if I go look at this step, this is what you would have received as mail, where you would have this subject and this as the body. So you could have decided whatever the subject and the text should have read, and that's the mail you would have received. In today's demo, I'm not able to show you that notification via mail because my current system is not configured with the mail server, so it's not transmitting the mails. But ideally, you receive a mail notification, and in addition, you also receive notification directly in the tool. So if I log out and log in as the COE, Center of Expertise. So what I've done is I've initiated the change and the requester is the owner. So the process it would follow is that it would go to the Center of Expertise, of which the system user is a part. So the system owner gets a task, they validate the change, and then it skips the step and is published. So that's what should be the behavior. So as a system user, which is part of the COE, I would have received a notification. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you the notification, but you do see that there's a notification here. It is shown under my tasks. So there's one task pending. The same thing is also available here as part of my tasks. So in both the places you can see it, but here it is highlighted. So it catches your eye when you log in to the home screen. You also receive a notification with the link to this task, of course. So you can click on it and it shows you the task, review approval request for that proposed finance model. So if I come back to this, so it shows you the name of what the task is all about. It says when was it assigned to you. I have not maintained the due date now. That's part of the configuration which I said earlier, where you can maintain the due date and also have an escalation strategy behind to say if the 75% of the due date has been reached and the task has not been actioned, then it is escalated. So that's something you can configure. At present, the status is new. I've just received it. I have not actioned it. If you start actioning it, then it changes to in progress. And then it says this has been assigned to me in the role of COE. So it shows you what the role is. If it were assigned to you as a model owner, then the name here would have been owner. Right. So I can either click here or I can click here. In both the ways, I can open the model, open the task to see what the task is all about. In addition, if you look at these three dots here, there's also an option to delegate it to somebody. So you can click on this and say, okay, I actually delegate it to the owner. Which is a little slow. Let me leave that for now, but you can delegate it to people. You also have an option of substitution, which I said earlier. So you can actually click on substitution and maintain the dates where you are not available, and any task that comes to you is sent off to this person as a substitute. But now let me action this. So I, as a system user, look at my task, and that's the screen that I was showing you earlier, where you had designed something, which was this screen here. So review model step 1 of 2. This is that screen that you had designed, which I had shown you earlier. So you can design how the screen looks like, and when the task is presented to you, it is shown up here. So that's how it would be shown to you as per the design. So it shows me the model name, read only. It shows me who the requester was. It shows me what have they requested for. They've asked for publication of the model. And this show me the scope of the change. In this case, it is just one model, but it could be more than one. And what you see in addition is the link to the model in the dev database, the link to the model in the publication database, and the comparison. So it enables or makes your life easier to the extent that it actually shows you the differences between the past and the change, in which case it is easy for you to decide uh, the change approval. So in this case, I've clicked on this comparison option, and it is actually uh, most of the process is in gray. Okay, that's where I had maintained the model attribute. So that's why it was not picking it up the first time. Uh, anyway, so you see the change clearly what has been done. It says that you have taken off a few connections is activated by. You have changed the name attribute of this, rename this. So it says that earlier it was broker ID and password entered. Now it is called rename this. It shows that one object has been added, and it also shows that a connection is deleted. So it is something that enables you to carry out the approval, as in it enables your approval. You see that what has been highlighted is the change that has been carried out. So shows you clearly comparison between what has been edited versus what has remained unchanged. So if you're happy with this, you can go ahead and decide. Else, you also have an option to look at them independently. So if you want to look at it as a full model, you can click on that link, and it actually shows you the model in its entirety. So that's how the model looks like. This is shown in the dev database because that's what I've clicked, the dev link. Similarly, you can also click in the publication link to see how it is currently. And of course, I've shown you the comparison already, which I think is more useful because it actually compares the two and shows you the differences. And then at this stage, you can decide if the change is right or incorrect. You can click on rejected, in which case the comments become mandatory. You can see a asterisk here, which is not in case of approved. So in case of approved, it doesn't show you asterisks, but it lets you add an additional approval required. So that's another flexibility that you can have. That if you think that as COE you uncover a change that is perhaps needing additional approval from the compliance team or the risk team or something, it allows you to click on this and add another layer of approval. Say, yeah, modeler is already here. System, I am already system, no, say, so there is a risk owner. I can add that person to it. So now there are two people who need to approve it. Else you can also change it to say, okay, this is not needed, just this. So you can decide what the approval should look like. And if it is not needed, then you can uncheck this and approve. And then you can say, okay, or good, ready for publication. In which case you can submit it. Else you also can look at history. If multiple approvals are part of this chain, then it shows you all of those previous steps as well. In this case, it is just the first level of approval, so there's no much history that is shown here. But I've approved it and I've submitted it, in which case it goes off my to-do list. And in this case, since we had bypassed that second level of approval, and we had the requester as the owner, it directly goes on to publication of the model. So there's nothing to hold it anymore. If I look at
5 minutes left, Manish. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. If I look at the dashboards, you can actually see how the performance of these different workflows are taking place. So it gives you a brief summary of all the change requests that are either in progress or have been completed. So it shows you that option as well. So This is something that I have created uh, for a demo, but you can have something much more aesthetic, good looking. And But for now, for the demo, this I guess gives you the idea of what it is. So you have an option to click on all of these to see what's happening. So there's one rejected, one under review, and 6 approved. If you want to see which of them have been, which of them is under review, you can click on that, and it filters out to show you that this particular one, uh, which is about generic monthly closing, that's the process. Uh, is has been submitted by the modeler on such and such date on the 5th of September. It has been approved by the COE on the same day, but it is pending with the owner for their review. So it actually shows you in the traffic lights, green and amber, that's where the status is, and it is actually pending with this person RR01. That's the risk owner. Doesn't matter who it is, but that's the current executor against who this task is currently pending. And the status is, there's more information here down. You can see the name of the model, what's the status, and also the history related to it. It all shows up here. Uh, Else, you can look at the full picture, and the same thing is available here as traffic lights. You can see how the progress is. I've also added a filter here to show you that you can filter it based on things like who has submitted for approval, or you can filter it based on projects. So if you are maintaining projects against processes, you can also have a filter where you can filter it based on projects to see which of the processes in your particular project are undergoing change and what's their current status. So these are some of the capabilities that are available in ARIS as part of governance. Of course, this time was limited, so I have shown you something as a brief summary.